The first time I heard her play, I was pushing a mop across a floor that probably cost more than my whole apartment. It was almost midnight, my back was on fire, and I remember thinking, if I can just make it to the 4 a.m. bus without crying in front of security, that's a win, you know what I mean? The executive floor of Harper Innovations was dead quiet, all glass marble and expensive furniture. And there I was, in my gray janitor polo, that never stopped smelling like bleach, doing my best to be invisible. I was halfway down the hallway, counting how many offices I had left, when I heard it, not the usual hum of vents, or the ping of an elevator. A piano, a thin line of notes, coming from one of the side rooms, stumbling. Starting again, one wrong chord that clanged too loud in the silence. Then a tiny, frustrated sigh. It sounded like someone trying not to cry. I should have kept walking. I had 4 more floors to clean, a supervisor obsessed with her clipboard, and a 6-year-old at home sleeping on a neighbor's couch. But there was something in that clumsy melody that felt way too familiar, like someone fumbling around in the dark for a piece of themselves they'd lost. And by the time I realized what I was doing, my feet had already turned toward the sound. I pushed the door open a few inches and stepped into the nicest room I'd ever seen. 2 black grand pianos, soft lighting, thick sound panels on the walls. And in the middle of all that money sat this tiny girl in a blue dress, feet dangling off the bench, shoulders up around her ears, fingers moving slowly over the keys. She was playing a broken version of a piece I used to know by heart, starting the phrase, hitting the wrong note, stopping, going back to the beginning. And at first I couldn't figure out why it looked so strange until I paid attention to her eyes. They moved, but they didn't land on anything, not on the keys, not on me. They drifted past all of it, and that's when it hit me she was blind, alone in a locked tower near midnight, trying to teach herself piano from a tune somebody hummed. She hit another wrong note and flinched like she'd been slapped. And before my brain could remind me there were cameras in the ceiling, my mouth jumped in. "It's the F sharp, not the F," I said. "Soft the way you talk when someone's already beating themselves up." Her hands froze, her head snapped toward my voice, eyes still not quite on me. "Who's there?" she asked, and in that moment I knew exactly how bad this looked. Janitor boss's kid, forbidden room. But backing out felt worse, so I stepped in. "Hey. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you." I said, "I'm Janelle. I clean here at night. I heard you playing and recognized the song." That's all. She tilted her head, and under the fear there was a little flicker of attitude I liked. "You're not supposed to be in here," she told me, and I couldn't help laughing. "Pretty sure the same goes for you, kiddo." That got me the smallest smile. Then she asked, "Am I in trouble?" And the way she said it like that was her default assumption about life, hit me harder than any wrong note. "Not with me," I told her, easing onto the edge of the bench. "What's your name, Lily?" she said, then, after a beat, "Lily Harper and—" Yeah, that last name landed same as the logo on the front of the building. I realized I was sitting next to the owner's kid, with my mop bucket parked in the hallway. I asked what she was doing down there alone, and she explained it like it was no big deal. Her nanny thought she was asleep in the apartment upstairs. Her dad was probably still working. When he worked late, she got bored and liked to sneak down to the music room. There was a piano in the apartment too. It had been her mom's, but he didn't like when she played that one because it makes him sad. And she said it like that sadness was her fault. When I asked what happened to her mom, she told me her mother died when she was born. Everyone said it wasn't her fault, but if she hadn't been born, her mom would still be alive, so she figured her dad wished he had his wife instead of a blind daughter who reminded him of everything he lost. And hearing that from an 8-year-old just cracked something open in me because I have a daughter, Mia, and as tired and broke as I am, the idea of her ever believing my pain is her fault makes me sick. I told Lily what I know for sure, If a doctor ever put me in that impossible position and said, "It's you or your kid," I'd pick my girl every single time. That's not on her, that's on me. I told her her mom didn't die because she exists. Her mom died because sometimes love takes a risk. And the worst thing happens, and her dad's grief doesn't make her less wanted, it just means he's drowning and doesn't know how to swim and hold her at the same time. Her fingers drifted over the keys while she thought about that. Then, I asked what she'd been trying to play, and she said her nanny hummed it. Something her mom loved. She didn't know the name, just the way it made her chest hurt and feel warm at the same time. I told her there was another piano in the room and asked if I could play with her, and for the first time in years, I sat down at a real instrument. She started the melody again, slow and shaky, and after a few bars, my hands remembered where to go. I slipped in underneath her line, smoothing the rough edges, catching the notes she missed. And something changed. She sat up straighter, her hands got surer, she smiled. Actually smiled. And for 3 minutes, I wasn't the woman in non-slip shoes, pushing a cart. I was the girl who used to win competitions and believe she'd make it out. When the last chord faded, Lily turned toward me and whispered, "Will you come back tomorrow, please?" Nobody ever plays with me, and every practical part of me was screaming about my schedule, my rent, my supervisor. But I heard myself say, "I'll come back," and I promised before I could stop it. What I didn't know was that out in the hallway, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, her father had been listening to every note. People always call that the twist. The billionaire in a white shirt crying outside the music room, while his blind daughter plays with the janitor. But for me, the real twist was what he did with that information. I went home like usual, caught the 4 a.m. bus with my feet aching, paid my neighbor with money. I didn't really have slid into bed next to Mia for 2 hours, before my alarm dragged me into my diner uniform, spent the morning mixing up orders, because my brain was fog-rushed to my evening shift, at the grocery store, almost fainted in the aisle from sheer exhaustion. And by the time I clocked in for cleaning again, I'd decided I couldn't go back to that music room. It was too risky for my job, and too painful to leave. Then my supervisor, Denise, met me by the supply closet tapping her clipboard, like a judge told me security had seen me wandering by the music room the night before, reminded me my job was to clean, not to investigate sounds, and dropped the line she loved. "Single moms like you don't get to make mistakes here," like. My whole life was a warning label. I apologized, promised it wouldn't happen again. Spent the next hour arguing with myself. Keep your head down, Janelle. You cannot afford to lose this. But every time I pictured Lily sitting at that piano, waiting to see if I meant what I said, my chest hurt. At 11:50, I swore I would walk past that door at 11:52. I was slowing down at 11:53. I was knocking. And when she turned toward the sound and said, "You came," with that little breath of relief in her voice, I knew I'd made my choice. The next few nights turned into this secret little pocket of my life. I'd scrub toilets and empty trash cans, then step into that room and do the work. My soul still remembered teaching Lily for an hour, listening to her talk about her dad, reminding her again and again that his sadness wasn't her crime. And the whole time, unknown to us, the man himself was in the hallway, listening to his daughter laugh. On the 6th night, he finally opened the door. We were mid-duet when the knob turned. I saw him in the reflection, off the piano, tall, tired eyes, rimmed red, wedding ring still on. Lily's hands flew off the keys. "Dad," she whispered. And I felt my stomach drop. I jumped up, words tumbling out. "Mr. Harper. I'm so sorry. I know I'm not supposed to be in here. I heard her playing. I just wanted to help. I'll leave right now. Please don't fire me. I really need this job." And he cut through my panic with my name, Janelle. "Breathe," he said, quiet but wrecked. He went to Lily first, knelt beside her, told her he'd been listening all week, told her she sounded beautiful, admitted he'd been hiding from her, and from the piano, because every note reminded him of her mother, that he'd punished her for surviving without ever meaning to, and she cried and grabbed his shirt, and you could feel 8 years of distance crack. Then he turned to me and did something I still think about. He thanked me, looked me straight in the eye, and said, I'd done more for his daughter in 6 nights than he'd done in years, pulled a folded contract from his pocket, and offered me a full-time job as Lily's private piano teacher, a salary big enough to quit my other jobs. Benefits, childcare for Mia, the whole thing, right there between 2 grand pianos at midnight. People online always argue about that part. Some say it's a fairy tale, some say it's unfair, that one man can flip someone's life around with a signature. Some say I didn't earn it, that I just got lucky in the right hallway. And I understand why it bothers people, but in that moment I didn't feel like a charity case. I felt like somebody had finally looked past the bleach stains and seen the part of me I'd buried. I took the contract home, stared at it for a couple days, listened to Mia breathe beside me, thought about another year of 3 jobs and 2-hour naps, and finally called him and said, "Okay, when do I start?" And from there, my life didn't turn perfect, but everything tilted. Suddenly, my mornings started with driving to a house where my job was to teach, not to scrub. Mia and Lily became best friends. Lily's playing took off, and Grant, that's his name when he's not Mr. Harper, started showing up to lessons, sitting in the corner, just listening, figuring out how to be a dad in real time. A few months in, he asked me to play a charity concert with Lily to raise money for music programs in schools that had cut their arts. I almost said no because I was terrified, but I said yes because I realized I couldn't keep telling those girls to be brave if I wouldn't get back on stage myself. We played, my hands shook, and I did it anyway. Lily absolutely owned the piano. The girls did a duet that made half the audience cry, and that night we raised enough money to start talking seriously about a tuition-free music center, somewhere in all of that. The lessons, the breakfasts, where he actually sat at the table, the nights when he admitted how much shame he'd been carrying. Something else happened. I stopped seeing him as the man who signed my checks and started seeing him as a man who was trying, really trying to do better. And when he told me one evening, voice unsteady, that he had fallen in love with me, that our messy little patchwork family felt like home, I had another choice to make. Let my past and my ex and every person who'd written me off decide the rest of my life, or believe that maybe I really did deserve a love that showed up. Fast forward, and now we run that music center together, a place with our names on the sign, where kids from neighborhoods like mine sit at real pianos and hear someone say, "You belong here," where a blind girl and a janitor's kid headline concerts and blow the roof off a fancy hall. And every time I unlock those doors, I think about that first night, a mop, a hallway, a broken melody, and the decision to follow it. So now, I want to throw it to you, because this is where people always split. In the comments, do you think what happened to me was fair? Was it justice? Was it luck? Should anyone have that much power over somebody else's life? Have you ever been underestimated because of your job or your past? Or watched someone with power pick one person to save and walk past another? Does a story like this give you hope, or make you mad, or a little bit of both? Tell me in the comments how you see it. Share your own hallway moments. And if my story made you feel even a little braver about following that faint bit of music in your own life, hit like, subscribe, and send this to someone who needs to hear that. Where you are right now is not where you have to stay.